everybody. It's Chris from Guilty Words, where we unravel crime one word at a time. As I record this, it's time for the closing arguments of Donna Adelson's trial. But I want to look back at what her son Rob had to say during his testimony. And as difficult as it was, I pulled out what I consider the 5 most compelling or damning statements that he made about Donna. But in addition to that, I want to look at the actual wording he used. Part of what makes his testimony so compelling as well is it was obvious that he was a man who has just been incredibly hurt by all this, and it tore him apart to have to testify against his family, not just his mom, but his family in this way, and yet he was standing up for truth. Let's take a look at 5 of his statements that don't bode well for Donna. Coming in at number 5 is Rob's commentary about Jeff Lacasse and the odd text message that Wendy sent him just before Dan was murdered.
Now, during the summer of 2014, did Wendy Adelson, I'm going to move on to 2014 now, did Wendy Adelson send you a text where she referenced having a boyfriend?
Yes.
And was this before Dan Markel's murder?
Yes.
Why was that memorable to you?
It was just unusual. Wendy, never was someone who would, share her, romantic life or boyfriends or, tell me or, text me about anyone she was dating. So it just stood out as, unique or different.
So just before the murder, Wendy sends Rob this odd picture and description of Jeff Lacasse. Why? There isn't any clear answer. It could be 2 different things. One, it was her way of, again, pointing to Jeff Lacasse, but not directly doing it herself. She wanted to make sure that the police knew about Charlie and her parents. Jeff was the backup fall guy, so let Rob bring him up. Otherwise, she might look too much like I just broke up with this guy, and so I'm going to point the finger at him. And they might spend too much time looking at him and not enough time looking at Charlie. It's a stretch, I know. Or the other is, that's how Charlie and Donna told her she should play it. I don't know. Coming in at number 4, let's listen to what Rob had to say about Donna's description of Wendy moving out of the house.
Probably 5-6 days after Wendy had moved out, and then told me that somewhat gleefully or, pleased that they timed the phone call to Danny right before he was supposed to give a speech at the meeting he was at.
Rob uses the word gleeful to describe Donna's attitude when she's talking about how they arranged to tell Dan at the worst possible time that Wendy had walked out with his kids. I also didn't realize till this trial that Donna had rented an apartment in her name. I always kind of wondered how Wendy was able to hide the kids from Dan for 2 weeks when he was desperately looking for them. Now it makes more sense. So gleeful. Later he amended it to say pleased, but his initial gut reaction to how his mother was feeling and describing things, gleeful. It has such a connotation of evil machination to it in this context. Gleeful and pleased, because why? Not only is she winning against Dan, but she's inflicting maximum pain at the worst possible time. It speaks a lot to Donna's character. Next, let's listen to what Rob said in terms of his mom's interest in who killed Dan Markel.
Did Donna Adelson seem curious about who killed Dan Markel?
No.
Was there a complete lack of curiosity?
Yeah, nobody seemed curious.
Did you actually ever ask her, after the murder, hey, what do you think happened? What do you...
Yeah, and the conversations were kind of rerouted, or that was certainly discouraged, and it was probably maybe sometime like mid-August, when I finally had a chance to ask and say, what is going on? This was not a small event. This was getting a lot of notoriety. And I said, what do you guys think happened? And she had said, I don't know and I don't care. It doesn't concern me.
So the woman who obsessively inserts herself into her children's lives, arranging their dates, keeping track of their spouse's travel plans, knowing all their bank account information, whatever else she might be doing, has absolutely no curiosity about who killed her son-in-law. Rob thought it was unusual, and he grew up with his mom. And certainly, I think a lot of us do too. Why wouldn't she be curious? Did she hate Dan Markel so much that she didn't care? Or did Donna already have the answer, so she didn't have to be curious, and it might be dangerous if she was? One of the most startling pieces of testimony was when Rob described Donna's instructions to him about not talking to the police and what happened after.
After that conversation with the FBI, did Donna Adelson ever say anything to you about having talked to law enforcement or the FBI?
It was either that afternoon or the next day, but and she had called me and said, just want to let you know, if the police come around, don't talk to them.
Okay, so she told you not to talk to law enforcement.
Correct.
Did you let her know that you already had talked to law enforcement?
Yeah, I said I already did.
And what did she say to that?
She said, "Oh, well, you don't know anything anyway."
You don't know anything anyway?
Correct.
Was that an unusual statement coming from your mother?
Yeah, everything that week was unusual, but I clearly didn't know anything, but I wasn't going to not talk to the FBI if they show up at my house.
Oh, well, you don't know anything anyway. Which begs the question, anything about what? And that's what Rob started asking himself. Anything about the murder? Anything about actions leading up to the murder? Anything about a conspiracy? Why would Donna be relieved? Because Rob was so far removed from something. And what was that something? He thought it was a very odd and suspicious statement. And I think I do too. The piece of testimony that knocked me to the floor, Rob's discussion about what Donna said to him about how Dan Markel was killed.
Things that she told me is, it bothered me, but I didn't have any other details about. But she said that, someone went to the front door and said, "Are you Dan Markel?" and then shot him. And then I said, "Well, how could you know that? Who's telling you that?" And she said, "Well, that's just what they're telling us." And
okay. So she said someone told her that someone knocked on Danny's door, said, "Are you Dan Markel?" He said yes, and the shooter shot him.
That's the story I heard, and later we found out that wasn't what happened, but that story bothered me a lot because there's only one way you could hear that story.
Was she crying when she told you that information?
No.
As Rob so aptly put it, how would she know that? Who could have told her that? Who could have told Donna immediately, within a day or two of the murder, that the killers had walked up to Dan Markel, asked him his name, and then shot him at his front door? Especially later when it turns out that's not what happened. It seems like that's what she thought was supposed to happen. And obviously Rob had his suspicions confirmed, even more with statements like this. Rob Adelson was a compelling witness for the prosecution, partly because he was the defendant's son and testifying against her, partly because it was so obvious that he was just so affected by this entire situation, partly because it was also obvious that he was favoring the truth over protecting his mother, unlike his sister, who did a lot of squirrely answers. But some of it, too, was the language he used when he called Donna gleeful when she helped Wendy plan the timing of the bad news to Dan. And I didn't play this clip, but when he said she hated Dan Markel, Now, the prosecution has said that, but it sounds different coming from him. He's not trying to sugarcoat anything, but neither is he going to exaggerate it out of a feeling of spite or anger because it's so obvious that he wishes he didn't have to do this. He's not the estranged son who's trying to get back at his parents. He's just a man trying to do the right thing. Let me know what you think of his testimony in the comments below and what you think was some of the most interesting or effective things that he shared. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. And you know the YouTube routine. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. It does help the channel get out to more viewers so more of us can join our little Guilty Words family, which is getting quite big. Thank you so much. We're doing this. And until I see you in the next video, please use your words wisely and well. Take care.